welcome. Introduce yourself.
Hey, how long have we got? So, thanks ever so much for having me on, Dan. It's interesting because I seem to spend most of my time the other side of the podcast. So yeah, a bit nervous today about talking about me. But yeah, so my name's Rebecca. I'm Rebecca Heald, and I'm a consultant in the construction industry. I am trying to drive the agenda forward in terms of sustainability and diversity. So working with businesses in the industry who are wanting to move forward and do things that bit differently.
Nice, very good. So as always, we like to know about the person, the journey into construction, and really we'd love to hear about yours, going all the way back as far as you'd like to, as far as school we'd like.
Goodness. It's really interesting because it's like 2024 has been a massive learning curve for me when you mentioned school, because I was talking yesterday to somebody about me and my passion and what have you. And I said, I remember back when I was in university, I really struggled with my undergraduate degree because I always wanted to be different. I always wanted to do things differently. I was always that person that wanted to change the world. And I remember, like, I was in my final year maybe, and I was doing really badly in all my assignments. And up until that point, I've been getting like 2-1s firsts. And looking back, I realised what it was at the time, though. At the time, because I was such a big picture person, I didn't see it. Basically, everybody knows. Well, everybody should know that when you're doing your degree, when you're doing your A-levels, when you're doing your GCSEs, you're always, not that I'm saying I agree with this, with an education background, but you basically need to spiel out whatever it is that, the lecturer or the exam board wants to hear, yeah? So me, though, being me, I was like, no, I'm going to look like when I was doing my literature review. So I did a French degree and, French and Italian, and I had to do literature reviews on French texts, and I was always looking for new ideas, new things that nobody had ever, talked about before. And I thought this was great because I was like, yeah, I'm really showing creativity and what have you. But no, because it didn't tick all the boxes. And yeah, anyway, it's only been recently where I've kind of realised that that's part of who I am, and that's part of, of what I'm about. And it's had challenges for me over the years before, as I've kind of got to know and understand myself better. So that does kind of lead me on to, like, when I was younger, I always struggled, growing up. I didn't have an easy childhood. I had quite a traumatic childhood. My dad's an alcoholic. I had an abusive stepfather. Mum was pretty absent, and nobody knew how to deal with me because, like I said, I was always that one that wanted to be a bit different and was always had really good intentions, but sometimes struggled with the passion that brought, and also struggled to kind of stay in my box. So I ended up going away to university, couldn't wait to get out of Lincoln, where I am back now, but went to university and ended up went to the University of Manchester, did a French and Italian degree, struggled with anorexia. So I was diagnosed with anorexia when I was 19, and so struggled with that for the whole of my university career. Lucky that I ended up getting my degree, to be honest, because I think in my final year I was very close to ending up in hospital. But I did get my degree, went out to work in Manchester, got bored, hated it. Again, I was like, oh, there's more. I'm here to do more than what I'm doing. So I ended up thinking, right, I'll go teach. So went into teaching, and still struggling with my anorexia at this point, but went into teaching, taught in some really tough schools in Manchester. And then when I was about mid to late 20s, I think, I was on a fixed term contract and needed to get a new job. So I applied for jobs all over, I say all over, Manchester, Nottingham, Lincoln, and ended up, I won't bore you with the whole interviews saga, because when you look back, you're like, things happen the way they were meant to happen. But ended up actually, so while I was going through the application process, I saw a job in diversity and inclusion, and it needed a lot more experience than I had. But because it was a promotion. But I thought, do you know what? Why not? I'm going to go for it anyway. Even if I don't get it, at least I've shown that I've tried, and it's been an experience. And I remember when I was interested in it, I went in to do a little bit of like work experience, to kind of get a little bit get my face known, I think, within it. Anyway, went for the job, got the job, and then ended up. That's kind of where my whole passion for doing the right thing for diversity, really started. I went on to do my master's in bilingualism, and ended up doing training, professional development in schools for teachers around diversity and inclusion, how to diversify the curriculum, etc., etc. And then ended up going through a restructure. Sorry, this is a very long story. Ended up going through a
That's
restructure.
good. Gives us the insights. Like it.
Ended up going through a restructure when I was pregnant, with my first son. So up to this point, I was still on on teachers' terms and conditions, but with like additional leadership points or whatever. But I went through a restructure and came back after having my first son and finding myself having to do the job that I was doing, which was, like I say, to develop strategies and roll out education strategies in schools when they existed as they did. And then was also told, right, you are now in a leadership position. We have made all of your equivalents redundant, kept you. We've got you a new team that have been assimilated by people all over the education sector in the authority. Some have got some experience, some don't have experience. But here you go, here's your team. You need to train them, develop them, give them vision, give them a mission, set up all the processes and procedures from scratch, go and do it, right? And it's interesting because although I worked for the local authority, because of the nature of the work that I was doing, we were always like on the periphery, which is ironic, really, because we were in a minority within something that we were trying to promote. Anyway, that was an experience. I just had my first child. I was told that if I go to pick up my son from school, it would be frowned upon because now I was the leader of the team. There was so much pressure on me. I was that person that just felt like she had to, as a woman, had to prove herself, had to go above and beyond, sacrifice so much of my time with my young child to do it. And but it taught me a lot. And I stayed in that job for quite a long time, and I really did turn around what began as a dysfunctional team into the most amazing team that, when I left, I was so proud of what they were doing and what they were achieving. But, of course, there were lots of learning points, lots of things that really kind of, I suppose, helped me now in terms of what I'm doing. So anyway, whilst I was doing this, I got married, obviously had 2 children, was in a very toxic marriage, a very abusive marriage. So behind the scenes, I had this great job, this great career, but I was also struggling with domestic abuse at home, anorexia. So I'm going backwards a little bit now. So I had a breakdown after I had my second son, suffered really badly with postnatal depression. And it was at that point that I was like, yeah, I definitely need to be doing more. Because whilst I'd done a great job in the local authority, there was a lot of discrimination, there was a lot of inequality, there was a lot of bullying that went on, and I just felt like I needed to do something else. So to cut a long story short, I decided at that point to retrain. I actually retrained initially in nutrition and wellbeing, because obviously I had a passion for helping people that had been struggling with, mental health and with eating disorders. Ironically, at the time, I was still struggling myself, but it took me another 5 years to kind of get myself better, leave my husband, and think, actually, I'm in a place now to set up my business. Divorce was awful. Divorce was horrendous. It was 2.5 years in and out of court. Yeah, won't go there. But at that point is when I started my business. So alongside COVID, going through this really messy divorce, being on my own with the 2 kids, doing a full-time day job, I set up my business. Now, the business started out as, it's interesting though, because COVID gave me a real great opportunity, because up until that point, it was still frowned upon to have the kids in the background or to do, to do stuff from home. Whereas all of a sudden, the world opened up to me. I was this single parent with 2 young boys at home, developing my business online, and all of a sudden it became okay. So that was great. So COVID
Yeah.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
it was really good in that respect for my business, and that's when I really set the foundation. Not going to lie, I probably threw myself into my business more than I should have, because I was trying to deal with everything else. But such is life. And started out doing leadership, well-being, coaching and training, mentoring for leaders, so mainly business owners, directors, executives. Naturally, as I did a good job with them, they then asked me to go in and do work with their teams. Now, as I went in to do work with their teams, I realised, obviously, because coming from an organisational development leadership background in education, I realised that there was absolutely no point me doing this work with teams if I wasn't doing work with the executive team, the senior leadership teams, because it's just falling short. It was just ticking a box. There's no point me going in and talking to people about their well-being and how they can be better versions of themselves if they're working within environments that don't just allow that to happen.
Yeah.
So that's when I kind of pivoted the business and decided to do what I'm doing, from the top down. And then so we're going to get now to the construction bit. And then, construction was never something that I thought I would go into. Now, I was really interested in working in male intensive. I say intensive because I think it was Jo Britton, who's amazing. I don't know if you know Jo, but she came on a podcast recently and she said, when we talk about male dominant, it gives a negative.
Yes, I did. I saw it. I
Yeah,
did.
yeah. So anyway, so I like to talk about it as male intensive. Was really interested in those kind of environments because, obviously, coming from a diversity background, seeing the impact that that can have, and also as a woman who's been, had to fight, I suppose, for her position in leadership. I felt passionate about it. But anyway, I got invited. So it was just as I pivoted the business, I got invited to a property and construction event, and I thought network event, and I thought, what do I want to go to that for? Why do I want to go to property and construction? It's not really the area that I want to work in. But I thought, do you know what? I'll go. Anyway, and all of a sudden I started getting clients in construction. So I got, there was a keynote speaker there that approached me. So I'd done my work beforehand, stalked him a little bit on LinkedIn. And then he came over and he was like, I've seen the stuff that you're doing. I want you to come and do some work with us. And then I just ended up with 2 or 3 contracts in construction, and ended up with quite significant contract, which is what I still am working on now, looking at sustainability within the built environment for one of my clients. So I literally, I don't know, thought, right, when I was thinking about my business and the business development about a year ago, I was like, well, I'm immersed in the construction industry. Let's just go balls deep. So here I am.
Yeah, you are.
And I think the diversity, inclusion stuff is my bread and butter. The sustainability stuff, I've learned a hell of a lot in a short amount of time. And that's where I'm at. Sorry, that was a very long way of telling you.
No, do you know what? That's exactly what we want to hear. That's the great. That's what gives it the foundations. And we've all got a story into construction. It's funny. Most people fell into it, and even I did. Weirdly, I ended up just getting a job stacking bricks in a builder's yard, and here I am, 20 odd years later, still in it. And spoke about this the other week about like construction. There's so many different angles to it, whether it is sustainability or whether it is mental health. And when you're in it, I think there's so much work to be done that you stick in it. And obviously you've enjoyed your time in it so far.
It's interesting because, and this is what I mean about how I only resigned from my employed role earlier this year. So I was doing that
Right,
alongside.
okay.
Yeah. It's interesting though, actually, because as much as I was desperate to focus full time on my business, I also was lapping up all the experience that I was still getting in my day job because, it gave me, obviously going into full-time employment, self-employment, it was going to be just me. Whereas while I was still managing and leading, I was still developing those those skills and stuff. So it was a tough decision to make, but it had to be made because I got to the point where I couldn't do it all anymore. I'm still a single mum. I've got 2 boys. I'm having to travel a lot for work. But yeah, I love it because I feel like I can be me. So, obviously being, realizing later on in life that I've got ADHD, realizing later on in life that I'm actually quite creative and never thought I was. I just feel like in construction, because, I can be accepted, or I am accepted. But it's interesting because as much as I feel like it's the place for me and I love it, and and I would encourage, it's interesting because a lot of people say, oh, I wouldn't want, a lot of people that are in construction say, I wouldn't want my children to come into construction. I'm the opposite. I want my kids to be in such an amazing industry, but I want it to change for them.
Yeah.
I don't want them to have the same struggles, that I still have as a woman in construction. There is, I come across, barriers all of the time, but I also come across so much amazing stuff, so many amazing allies, and that makes it all the much better. And it feels like what I'm doing in the industry is really aligned to what I was doing from day one. So I've always been super passionate about people, feeling like they belong, feeling like they can be themselves, obviously because of, what I've been through. And I think that is super important if we are going to be able to create a sustainable future and a sustainable built environment. Because without that diversity, how can we have that creativity of thought? The construction industry is contributing, the majority of, the issues that we have around sustainability.
Yeah.
So, we are producing the most CO2. We are kind of, impacting the environment the most. So it's where we need to be looking at the sustainability agenda the most. And for me, you can't do it without diversity.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's right. I mean, everything you've said is going back to just being accepted. It's exactly right. It feels like I don't think I could ever step out of construction now. I feel extremely accepted in construction. I'm not. I think we've got very similar traits in the fact that I'm not super professional, but I'm extremely creative and an
Are you saying
action
I'm not
taker.
professional, Dan? How dare you?
No, what?
I'm joking.
I actually did a post this morning about like business plans and stuff. Like, I'm not very analytical very much.
No.
I'm very much just an action taker. Like if I see something, I'm super excited. I'll think about it in bed and I'm like, right, I need to start taking action on it literally within like 8 hours. And
Yes.
I can be
That's
that here. I can be that in the construction industry, but trying to be that as a lawyer or others say it's really difficult. Whereas here, you're absolutely right. So take me then to so you come into this world of construction, and obviously looking at the work that you've done, you've seen that we lack on sustainability, we lack on equality, diversity, loads of these things. You've obviously come in and seen there's not a gap, but you can contribute. So you're very vocal in these topics, in what you do. And I think it's amazing because it's people like you that actually then go, oh, there's a good point here. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about, because you've not come in like shy about it. Not that you should be, but you've come in quite brash, like this all needs changing, and I'm going to go on the warpath to change it. And I'm like, fair play. And yeah, so talk to me like that. When did you see the gaps, and how did they come about, and why did you kind of think change needs to happen?
So it's interesting what you say about me being kind of bold and and wanting to. I'm not naive though. As much as I am, I can demand attention and what have you. I can't, what I want to do, what I want to achieve, I can never do on my own. And and that's why I am trying to reach out to people. It's why I started my podcast. It's why I do what I do. It's why I do my networking, because I need to get people thinking in a different way so that we can all together do make that change. That I'm wanting to bring people together instead of all of these silos. Like women in construction, for me, there needs to be more unity in it, the agenda around women in construction. Anyway, going back, because I'm terrible for going on tangents, going back to what you said about how did I see the gaps? Well, like I said, I initially saw a gap around diversity, well-being, that feeling of belonging in the workplace when I was asked to go. So I've seen the gaps by default. I ended up being asked to do work. As I was ended up doing the work, the things became apparent to me. And I think the reason things have become apparent to me, not that I'm, smart or anything like that, it's just because I've got a different perspective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to downplay myself. Of course, I'm an intelligent woman, and I always remember that. Yeah, and I think sometimes that can be super powerful. Being, whether you are somebody from a different industry, whether you are someone outside of the organization, you are able to see the gaps, the blind spots that people don't see. And this is why I'm championing for diversity, because you don't see blind spots either if you don't have diversity. And I think in terms of kind of how it's come about, because I see what I'm doing. So I've got, like, I do a lot of work around sustainability from a business perspective, but also from an environmental perspective. So I am looking at materials for architects, for planners, for contractors that they can use in a more sustainable way, so that we can meet the targets that we've got, around net zero, etc., etc., on being, creating a greener future. But that is tip of the iceberg stuff, right? Because there is no point in looking at all of that if we're not looking at teams that are going to be looking at these more sustainable solutions, and how we're going to have diversity of thought. And that has just happened almost organically. Literally, I did some work for a company, they're called the Facade Collective, and around sustainability, business sustainability. And they basically were like, we want you to come in and look at, sustainability from an environmental perspective. We love your approach. We love your attitude. We love your mission. Let's get you looking at this. And then that's, again, where I then saw the thread. So it's almost like the universe has kind of helped me along the way, if that makes sense.
It does. It does.
And
So you found that. So, yeah, and do you know what? Like, because I can't remember how we met. It was, I think it was through.
somebody
Yeah,
we linked on LinkedIn, and I think somebody connected
it
us.
was
Who connected us?
Natalie, I
Yes,
think.
it was Natalie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she said, "Oh, you got to meet Rebecca," and I was like, and then, do you know what? And then there's away from you in the background, like what I see is that we need to do better at this, we need to do better at this, and then over here, there's you going, "We're here," we're shouting and we're making the noise, and it's good. Which then just takes me nicely onto the news that I tagged you in the other day. I
Yes.
couldn't believe that. I was a bit like. So Steve, he's from South. I've never met him, but he's very big on construction, does like construction news. Very, very good guy, especially from the mental health. And he wrote basically an update on the Women in Construction charity. Is it the charity, the CEYH?
Yeah.
So social kind of, and then it was saying they've had to shut down, and I'm thinking, what's happened there? So honestly, because of what you do, the first person I thought is, I've got to tag you in. I'm sure you've seen it, but I wanted you to see that other people had mentioned it. So talk to us about it. Like, what's happened? Like,
Yeah, it's interesting because you weren't the first one. I think as soon as that news came out, people were sending me the post or tagging me in the post, which was quite nice, actually, because it's really
yeah,
nice
yeah,
that it's nice that people thought about me anyway, or they link my name to that. But what's gone on? I think what's happened is that we've got other in construction groups, movements that have started, and I think funding's been an issue as well. But it is such a shame. It is a shame, but it also, for me, and it's going to leave a massive gap. Okay, now, for me, and I've been saying this so I'm involved in quite a few women in construction networks, because there are lots across the country. And I have been saying since I went to my very first one, we need more unity. We need, more to see more men at these events, because, there is no point in us, talking about the issues, talking about the things that need to change in silos. Okay, it's almost like we're trying to do things in a vacuum, and it's difficult because I'm met with various different responses when I say this. So some people are like, "Yeah, absolutely, you're absolutely right, Rebecca," and other people are, don't. And I think there can be some resistance to involving men in
Yeah.
these groups. But that, to me, I mean, I'm not saying that we can't have on the agenda that we want to improve, we want to increase the number of women in construction, and in particular areas in construction, and particular levels in construction. That needs to be something that we do. But how we're doing it might not be the best way. I don't know. I'm really putting myself on the line there by saying that, aren't I? But it's almost like what we're saying is, number one, we need to integrate more what we're doing with with men as well, because men have also got challenges. Men have also got struggles. Why aren't we talking about all of these things together? But I absolutely do believe that men can't understand a woman's experience in the industry unless they're told. I hear it all the time. Well, look, we've never come across this, or we've never seen this. I'm like, no, you just don't know about it. You're not aware of it because you're not seeing the invisible barriers that women face. But also, we need to get away from this narrative that we need to fix women. We need to get away. I mean, I've been in the situation, I still am in the situation where I mentor, and this is the reason why I moved across to doing more of what I'm doing, because I've mentored women, I've mentored men, and I can give them the confidence. I can, encourage them and, coach them to go in and ask for that pay rise or to ask for their workload to be looked at. But 9 times out of 10, as a women anyway, it's ignored or it's brushed under the carpet. So it's not a case of trying to change women. It's a case of looking at what needs to happen within the industry. Why are we still building our teams, our businesses on patriarchal structures? Because we're not living in those times anymore. Women are just as capable as men. And so we need to move away from thinking, because, the industry is still very much, the ideal worker is a white, middle-aged man. And if we don't agree, if we don't admit that that is the case, then how are we ever going to... And I'm not saying that that's wrong. It's the way that the workforce has developed, but times have changed. Women have been given the vote. Women, are coming back to work more often, but then not coming back into industries or job roles that they want to because of the barriers that are there. And unless we acknowledge and accept them, we can't move forward. So it's about awareness, it's about understanding, and then it's about action. And we all need to come together and unite to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's a great point. It really is. Do you know what's interesting? Like sometimes with podcasts like this, these conversations, they would potentially happen between two women, and I'm really glad that me and you have got a chance to kind of come on and talk about this, because it's like, you're absolutely right that I've looked at loads of women in construction events, and honestly, I'm like, I don't know if I'm welcome. I know that, it's like, am I not? I've got amazing amounts of connections that, of women in construction, loads and loads and loads of them. And I speak to them and I'm like, I probably am, but I don't know if I am. And that then creates this barrier from my side, which is like, that they don't see that actually I feel like actually there's no point in everyone talking about it if you can't come together, and it shouldn't even be a thing. It should just be a. But yeah, it's a great point. It's a great point.
And
And
also,
it's exactly this.
as well, I just want to touch on as well in that, men and women, I know there's, and you being one of them, I know there are so many amazing male allies out there that aren't using their privilege. Like you said, I'm not going. It's almost like, oh, women are doing their thing. Let's just let them get on with it. Or, oh, we can't speak up about this because it's, and it's like, no, you've got privilege. You've got, I hate to say it, but it's still male intensive, and men will listen to you probably over listening to us. And that is still the reality of it. So it's about you kind of championing what we're doing and sharing the experiences that we're experiencing, because that's how we're going to have a bigger impact. But it is also about women understanding things from men's perspective as well. Absolutely. Because I've learned so much. There's a reason that mental health is, it's a crisis in the industry. It's got the highest rates of male suicide. So men have got as many barriers and issues in the industry. And that's because, for me, primarily, I think it comes down to the lack of diversity and the lack of inclusion within the industry, because men have to put these barriers up just as much as women do. But we need to stop encouraging women to become men, we need to encourage women. They bring leadership
Yeah.
has changed. You know, leadership, our expectations of leadership now are different to what they were 20, 30 years ago. 20, 30 years ago, leadership was, you know, it was more dictatorial. It was more, you know, people were micromanaged a lot more. Now people want freedom, they want empathy, they want understanding. That's what women bring into the industry. So we need that balance. But also, as well, the more that we bang on about, you know, the around the narrative, the more toxic it can become as well, because you know, women end up then, you know, and I see this a lot, other women feeling threatened by other women.
Yeah.
And that's sad. That's really hard because you know, I've had it recently, you know, I get it. I get it a lot. Yeah, I would say that the barriers that I've faced in the industry and outside of the industry, by the way, have been created more by women than they have men. Men have been a lot more open to my ideas, my suggestions, my ways of thinking. Women are usually the ones that put the brakes on it,
Yeah.
or will be the ones to criticise the way that I'm doing things, and that's not fair. You know, and why is that happening? Is that happening because we are, you know, women feel like they've got to hold things together more, that they've got to put more of a thick skin on, that they're worried that if another woman comes in, then they're going to lose the power that they've got? If so, then why? What do we need to be doing differently?
Yeah. No, it's a great point, and you know, and everyone's got a different experience with it. Like I mentioned,
Yeah,
then
we
if
do.
you look at my connections and who I hang about with and who I speak to, you know, I've got architects that are females, I've got project managers that are females, business development managers females. You know, they're all in leadership positions, and yeah, from my perspective, things are great and things, you know, but actually the reality is so much more, and I need 100% more education on that of what's going on, and hanging around with people like, you know, like you, like your inspiration, and you know, it's great, and
Likewise.
I'm super on side. You're absolutely right, and I am privileged, 100%. And sometimes it's just having these sessions to understand how. I think a lot of the time as well, Rebecca, is we don't know how we can help. I think
No,
we're
I get
sitting here
that.
kind of going, "Well, everything's great, you know, crack on." Like we're completely like, "Woof," and
And
you
how
know,
can
and
you
it's
know? And how can you know if we're not having the conversations?
absolutely, absolutely, and you know,
One thing I
there
do
is
want to say though, sorry, I just want to say
no,
there
it's
at
fine.
that point that there are so many amazing women as well, though, and I've had so much support and encouragement genuinely from women in the industry as well. But you know, there are also a lot of female bullies in, you know, and not just in the industry, like I said, in other industries. I've been in female dominated teams and industries and experienced, you know, in other industries, sorry,
Yeah,
and experienced it as well. So there's work to be done, I think, around self esteem as well for women, etc. But anyway, sorry, I just wanted to
no,
say.
no, it's fine. To be fair, from what you said earlier, I absolutely imagine that the support outweighs the negative. But unfortunately, like what you do now, whenever you put yourself out there, like me, like anyone else, you're going to have the people that hate, you're going to have the people that love. And part of that journey is just accepting that. You know, we all want to be liked by everybody, but yeah, unfortunately, there's
No,
always
I
them.
don't anymore. I know if I get liked by everybody, I'm
Oh,
not.
you were just straight out. Absolutely no care. That's good though. That's good. And you know, this conversation is one of the first. You know, this podcast started just before Christmas. We've had some great guests on talking about Building Safety Act, mental health at work. This is the first conversation that we've brought on where it talks about, you know, women in, you know, women in construction and you know, inclusion, diversity, and stuff. So it's nice to have it, and it's something just to trigger. And I've sat in lots of workshops and stuff, but there's still loads more to do. But so, which then takes us very nicely, like with this mission you've got, like you know, it'll never be completed. I think you've
No,
not completed the mission. How do you want to see it? Like, what would be a point where you feel like you've succeeded, or are you doing this till you right to the very end, plugging on at 100 years old? Like, you know, what would you like to see it get to a point where you'd be like, I've done my piece?
that will never happen. But no. So yeah, I mean, I've got a vision. and it's quite a big one. And I feel, at the minute, there needs to be a mindset shift. And I feel like, for me, I'll know that's happening when people, when literally it's not about me having a conversation with people for them to understand what it is that I do and how I can help. People are going to come to me and be like, look, we need you to look at this and how we're going to go about this, And for me as well, again, like I said to you before, it's not something I can do on my own. So further down the line, what I want to be doing is I want to be training, ambassadors within the industry to look at how we really are tackling some of these issues, because it needs to start inside. It's not easy work. It's not work that can just be done overnight. We need to get in and we need to speak to people. We need to educate. We need to become aware and understand. And we also then need to take action. But we can't take action until we understand what exactly is going on for people within the organisations. Yeah. So for me as well, to know that my work has been done, it would be obviously that one thing that I think is a really good measure is that we're going to have more sustainable projects, I suppose. I'm just trying to think about the best way to put it. Seeing more, at the minute, I'm still seeing like things like passive house projects, things like that that are being done kind of just to tick a box. But what I would love to see is what's happening in Scotland. In Scotland, they are basically, they are putting legislation into place that basically is in line with passive house standards, and all buildings have got to meet those standards. That's what I want to see here, right? I want to see that, and that will then show that we've got the diversity that we need within the industry. I want to see more sustainable products in the supply chain. And the reason I say about this, you might think, well, what's that got to do with what you're doing? Well, that will be testament. That will be the evidence that what I'm doing is working. More modern methods of construction. For me, it's about diversity within workforce, workforces that really work together, that feel that they belong. There's more transparency, because there's so much shadiness in the industry. There's so much that's kind of done behind closed doors, and not everybody knows what they're paying for or what they're expecting. So there's going to be more transparency. There's going to be more diversity of thought. And that means that we're going to see that diversity and that sustainability within the environment. So we want the diversity and sustainability within people. And then when you look out your window, you're not just going to see the same old buildings everywhere. You're going to see this beautiful, diverse environment, I don't know if I've summarised that very well.
You have. No, you absolutely have. 100%. We're involved with this every day, and it's coming. It is, there's a huge push, and it will get to the point that within tender processes, you're going to have to meet X, and to meet X, you need to prove how to meet X. The tick box exercises are absolutely on their way out, but it needs that constant push because people are still doing it because they need to do it. Unfortunately, within the world of construction, we have teams of people that build things that's what they want to do. They don't want to impact that, so it is being forced upon them. But
agreed.
It's just about going through the shift and
agreed. And I think it will come. It has to come. But I think there's so much that needs to happen as well. So there's stuff that needs to be done in schools. We need the education system to change the way that it is talking about the construction industry. We need young people to see the opportunity. I mean, the other day I was talking to my son and about, modern methods of construction. And he was like, what? You can build a house in a factory? And I'm like, yes, mate. And he's like, don't be so silly. I'm like, and, he's nearly 14. He's at a school that is a science and technology school. And I'm like, how do you not know? He's doing his engineering GCSE. I'm like, how do young people not know that we can look at construction differently? It's not just about laying bricks. It's not just about plastering. It's not just about being on site, and we need to encourage them to come into the industry so that we can look at different ways. We don't have to do things the way that we've done them just because we've always done them that way. That is costing the industry God knows how much money. And it's also creating fear. So I think legislation does need to change, and it will change because people are scared to do things differently. Like I'm working for my client at the minute. We've got some passive house certified windows. There's, people are sometimes skeptical about something that they don't know, and they're scared that something's going to go wrong. There's too much adversity to risk in the industry, and
Yeah.
that to me has to change.
100%. And you know what? It's people like yourself, though, that can do that. Because you always sit back and wonder, when change happens, I'll join in. Or you can be
Yeah,
the one to make the change and just be bullish about it. And really not, everyone loves to follow the one that wants to do something different. We all do, in a way. Whether it's through sales methods or business development methods or changing something, it needs to start with somebody. So why
I'm
it not
crap
be
at
you?
sales. Crap at sales.
I'm all
Sorry.
right at sales. But look, this is well, you've got my full backing. I just think I maybe, from where I do, like we spoke in the industry, I'm on here every day, part of constructing excellence. I'm involved with stuff, heavily involved in sustainability and mental health and welfare. I'm a massive advocate of what you do and a supporter. I think, maybe from the women in construction side, it's just understanding it more. And, that'll keep happening through these conversations. And, you might turn around to me and say, Dan, let's use this platform to go in and do this. And I'm here to support that. I think I might just need a bit of guidance on what that might look like.
Well, I can give you that. I've got a very clear vision of the way things need to be done. I just need the opportunity to do it. But the thing is, it's interesting you should say that, because I am on the back of what's happened. I'm really, if anybody who's listening, I'm keen to look at, at how we can fill the void that is there, and maybe kind of do things slightly differently. I want to bring more men into it. I think it's important. I think it's necessary.
100%. Well, look, I'm here and ready for it. But look, we'll close this out because it's been incredible, and we probably could go another 45 minutes, but
Yeah, I do
we'll
like
do
to
another
talk.
one. We'll do another one. Rebecca, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.